go too. So you get there, and what the Army does is they give you a lot of training, which is a good lesson for life. So you train to fall out of a plane for 3 weeks.
Mm.
So you practice small jumps, you practice high jumps, you get on a tower, you jump. So by the time you get to the date, you're pretty well trained in all the critical tasks on if something goes bad, like you're a toe jumper, because there's a static line that releases and sometimes it doesn't release. So by the time you get, you're pretty excited, but you also are in a stick with, if memory serves me correct, 16 to 20 to 32 other people. So you all jump, if you've ever seen the video, all together.
All right, recording in 3, 2, 1. All right, Brodrick, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thanks, Ross. Thanks for having me.
My man. Dude, we go back, bro.
We do. Well,
We go
yeah.
back.
Yeah, way
Jet ski
back.
days, bro.
Yeah, whenever someone invites me out to an impromptu time to get off and have some fun, I try to take them up on it. You never know what you'll find out.
Hey, man. That's absolutely right, brother. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show, man. Really excited to share your story with the listeners. We're both in real estate, obviously. We both know each other's stories. But for the people that aren't familiar with you or aren't familiar with your work, can you give us a brief overview of what you've been up to in your business?
Sure, what I've been up to. I am, a land guy. So I'm a real estate investor like you. I mean, the object at some point is to buy low and sell high, or buy high and sell higher, and depending on time frame. So what I've been up to most recently is primarily doing land deals. So I don't know if land developer or flipper or ranchette maker is a proper term, but what I do is I buy and sell ranchettes. So we buy larger tracts of land, anywhere from 10 to more. Our sweet spots the 50 to 150 acre tract, and then we sub that into smaller tracts and sell it either cash or seller finance. I think,
Mm,
which gives us a lot of variability in how we can move our product.
mm. And how long have you been in the land business?
Well, in the land business, primarily it's 2 years, but I've always been centered around land and agriculture. I don't know if you know this, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a cowboy. And so when I got to high school, I signed up for FFA, and I raised show steers and show cattle. I
Mm,
scrambled at Houston at the Grand Champion Steer, our local show, and I did livestock judging. So I was all set into that lifestyle, something I've always loved. And it's something I always thought I'd return to later on in life. And so when that opportunity came, I think I was already yoked to go
mm.
into land.
And what is FFA?
FFA is, so in Texas and a lot of rural places, we have FFA, is Future Farmers of America, the guys with the blue jackets. It's a high school organization that promotes agriculture, agriculture living, and learning about agriculture. A lot of
Mm,
places they may have 4-H and they work in concert. 4-H is more so for younger kids up to high school level, whereas Future Farmers of America is from freshman year in high school through senior in high school.
mm. Okay. So you've always been around land and countryside and been into that whole cowboy lifestyle on the ranch then.
I have. I mean, we lived in the suburbs, to be true, but
Mm,
my grandpa had 3 acres. And so when I moved out of Galveston into the suburbs, his house was midway between where I grew and where I live. And he had 3 acres, which isn't a lot, but it provided a lot of opportunity. So I'd bale hay in the summer. I'd ride. He taught me how to ride a horse, how to catch a horse, saddle him. We'd go on these long rides, and it really helped fill a void I had in my life for a strong male figure. And so I've always identified very strongly with that lifestyle. And I think there's a certain aspect of Texas where everybody wants to have a piece of land, and
mm,
we try to
mm.
fulfill that need that a lot of people have.
You know, a couple years back, I had the opportunity to go out to Bandera, Texas, and
Okay, yeah.
I went to Rancho Cortez out there for the
Yes.
weekend. Wow, one of the best trips of my life, man. I had so much fun. Like,
It,
so
what'd you
cool.
like about it?
So the horseback riding through hill country was just
Yes.
top notch. Like there's nothing like that. Waking up early morning, jumping on a horse. Because it was my first time riding a horse. So at first, yeah, I'm scared, thinking this thing's gonna take off. But the horses, they're so trained.
Yes.
They're like autopilot. They just follow the other horses. I couldn't
Yeah,
believe
exactly.
it. It was amazing.
Yes.
And the cabin lifestyle, man, just like there's no cell phone service, right? So
Yes.
you're like off the grid, and you just it's just nice, man. Like hill country is beautiful, you know. It's I don't
It
know. It's
is.
just such a cool experience.
What about the stars at night?
Stars at night, sitting by the bonfire, man, telling
Yeah.
they got the guy comes out and tells campfire stories,
Oh man.
and it's just a good time, man. You know.
It is, and it's one of those things that we grow up thinking about it. It's one of those things that as we have urban sprawl and everything, they're less and less attainable, but it is still out there if you reach out and grab it. And so a lot of people, they've always had this idea, long ranger, being out west, off the grid, and they have that dream of being able to do that. And that's pretty
Mm.
cool to experience that yourself.
Yeah, man. You know, so I asked the owner of the place because
Well,
this guy just owns like so much land, right?
yes.
You can drive for like 20 minutes, you're still on this guy's land. So I
Yeah.
asked him, I said, I'm curious, like, how much land do you own? He said, son, when you ask a man how much land he owns, that's like asking him how much money he's got in his bank account.
Exactly.
I'm like,
Yep.
whoa. I'm sorry.
That is so true. How much land you own or how many heads you have,
Yeah.
that's how much money he's got in his bank account.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah,
points
man.
of pride.
Yeah, that's it's a very interesting culture, man.
Yeah.
So that's super cool. So you've been in the land business for a while, going really well. We just talked before the call, and you're putting up some incredible numbers in the land space, man. Like holy smokes, just it's really cool to see what you've been
Oh,
up to.
thanks, man.
Most
Thanks.
people in real estate, Brodrick, like they gravitate towards residential.
Yes.
Right now with everything going on with COVID and the way the economy is right now, do you think there's advantages to being in the land business versus the housing business, or vice versa, or does it just not matter at all?
I think so. And to be true, that's where I started. So I started in real estate as a wholesaler. I mean, blocking and tackling, I think that's a great way to start because we learn the business from the inside out. I mean, my first contract I wrote, I lost $5,000 because I didn't understand what option money was, right? And going hard and all that. I was like, I lost $5,000 in my first contract, right? I
Wow.
wasn't very happy, but it was, as we say, tuition. But I started off wholesaling, and then a lot of wholesalers go, hey, I want to go from wholesaling to rehabbing. And I did okay. I struggled. I lost money on some deals, right? I made some money, but I found that I was just moving money around. And there's reasons for that. I think those are very valuable lessons.
Mm.
Um, a great idea, poorly implemented, can create non-optimal results. And maybe I would have done better if I'd stuck with that, but I thought it wasn't quite, there's some attributes of it that were less than ideal for me, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And that's not to talk about anybody that wholesales or wholesaling I loved, but what I was challenged for me was scaling that model, right?
Mm.
So I loved wholesaling, I loved talking to people, but scaling that model was challenging. And so my natural attribute, my natural next step from that was rehabbing. Well, rehabbing was fun. It wasn't naturally something I was good at because mechanically, I'm not mechanically inclined. It's just not something I've been good at. I know that about myself. I
Mm.
can look at things and see if they're right or not, but I don't really get excited about fixing stuff myself. That's just not my forte. I love negotiating contracts. I love seeing stuff evolve, creating things. But if that's not my natural thing, the guy that loves it is going to kick my butt every time,
Right.
if that makes sense. And that was a evolution for me. And what I found in land is it's very scalable. I wasn't great at keeping my numbers, but as I looked at the deals that I did that were lot deals and smaller land deals, they had the best margins, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So sorry, those my phone ringing. But so if you say those are the deals with the highest margin, and the interesting thing enough, and I'm turning this off, Ross, so I don't want to be rude. I apologize.
No, no
The
worries.
interesting thing enough, and this is crazy. When I first started, my grandpa said, you need to go buy lots at the county courthouse steps. Like, no, that didn't make sense. Whatever. Well, I wish I'd have listened to him because my lot deals, as I wholesaled, right, I would buy my lot deals at a third and sell them at a half. And people are like, why does that make sense? And I was like, okay, there's a lot of people that have struggled rehabbing. Engineers, you're buying whole people. They've said, hey, this doesn't work for me. So I would sell my small land deals as flips. And I'd say, okay, I don't know when you're going to make your money, but you'll double it. Might be 2 years, might be 3 years, might be 5 years, but you're not going to lose money. You'll double it. So I would negotiate hard on the way in because it's land, and I would get them at a third and I'd sell them at half. Now, was I leaving money on the table? Yes, but I was also making the money that was on the table, which
Mm,
is part of the aspect of being a wholesaler. So that's how I did that business. And then I looked eventually, I was like, whoa, I can make money doing that. Right. And so that was some of the things that planted the seed. And I think, increases as I look at my business, I think one of the key things is let your business take you where it needs to take you.
mm,
Right. So if right now rehabbing is doing great and that's something that I think someone feels great at and they're comfortable with the margins and the scalability and a couple other things, then follow that, take it to where it leads you and it'll lead you some great places. Because I think sometimes we try to force our business certain ways and we don't listen to what the business is telling us.
mm.
So I don't know if that, I mean, I can answer the question, but I think that's a better way to answer the question. So as we look at our business, just listen to the numbers, right? They speak loudly, right? And so it can take you ways. And I think to really answer that question, it's not just what you do, it's how we structure it, right? Because to compare rehabbing and wholesaling to what I'm doing now is challenging because one, it's working a lot better. So it's easier to say I love what I'm doing now, but my structure has changed. I was working by myself when I was rehabbing, right? I was taking private loans, I was doing all that. I over leveraged, right? It
Mm.
got me in a pickle. If you talk to Eddie Gant, who's a great guy, said one of the ways you can screw up in this business is over leverage. Easiest way.
Mm.
You're the borrower everyone loves, right? You're making no money, but they love lending to you,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Right. So now my structure, I partner on everything. I showed you one deal I did without a partner. And it was great, right? But at some points in that deal, it's like that's why I have partners, right?
Mm.
So to compare that, if you ask me if what I'm doing, I mean, the backdrop drop and some of the macro stuff, now it's COVID, everybody wants to get out and everything else. But that same like macro situation applies to Airbnbs, right? So if you're doing Airbnbs now, you're probably doing pretty well. And does it kind of apply to rehabbing? Rehabbing's pretty hot too. There's a lot of stimulus in the market. So a rising tide's lifting a lot of ships, but I feel pretty comfortable where my ship lies because it fits me.
Mm.
I love land. I got pictures. I mean, here's me with a heifer cat. That's when I was 17 years old. It fits me. I can talk the talk, walk the walk.
Mm.
People know. Someone goes, I want to raise cattle. I go, what kind? Right? And I can answer that question.
I didn't
So
even,
it
Brodrick,
fits
I didn't
me.
even know there were different kinds of
Oh
cattle.
yeah, like I just bought. Dude, I'm so excited. I just bought three limousines. That's what I used to raise. I used to raise red. I bought some black ones, and I'm excited. So that fits me. I mean,
That's awesome.
it's and not to say it won't fit anybody else, right? If you're from New York and you come down here and you're like, hey, guys want land. I've always wanted land. That's your story.
Mm.
So the one thing I've always heard is no one can sell your story better than you,
Mm.
right? But my story fits really well. I struggled, I pivoted, and it's working.
That's awesome,
And
man.
does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm curious to. Well, I have two follow questions. Number
yeah.
one, what are you doing right now to get in front of landowners to buy from them?
Ross, man, you be crazy. We buy everything off MLS.
MLS. Okay, that's awesome, man.
MLS.
That's
So,
awesome.
I
Easy access.
easy access MLS, publicly available sources. I don't do any marketing for deals
Mm.
anymore. Just because there's a lot out there and you can, once you know what to look for and you find out what fits what you're used to looking for, there's plenty out there.
Mm.
and the markets change, and you can do big deals, you can do small deals that you develop. But from that standpoint, it's probably not so much getting in front of landowners as it is getting in front of investors and getting the capital,
Mm,
right? And then selling the eventual product, right?
right. Yeah, in the housing market as a rehabber,
Yeah.
it is nearly impossible nowadays to buy deals on the MLS in Houston. I can't speak for other markets unless you have some sort of system where you're the first offer to the table within 5 minutes of that listing going
Right.
live. Yeah, I saw. I just talked about this on a previous episode. I saw a deal the other day. It gone in less than an hour, and it was a good
Yeah.
one. And
Yes.
it's just you got to be marketing in the offline world in the housing space. So it's really cool to hear that you're still able to make money, build your business using MLS to buy land.
Well, there are deals that I've seen with houses, but they're different, right? So that if I was looking at housing deals, I'm looking for deals with houses with a lot of land, right? And we're subdividing, we're doing something different.
Mm,
So, and I would imagine in this environment, bigger houses, right? And I think the one thing is as we look at things and go, okay, this is this model, this model, this model, this environment that's got to change. And what I find is, when I was a wholesaler, I differentiated myself, one, by being a good negotiator, where they're all good negotiators, and two, by doing difficult deals. Everybody wants more difficult deals. So I would imagine if I were to, you know, knowing what I know now, I think there's probably some housing deals that look different. And one of the things that's really helped me catapult my business is mentors,
mm,
and mentors who are used to looking at different types of deals. And I think that might be something that
gotcha.
makes it right.
Now, my second question is, what do you think about buying land in places like New Hampshire, Maine, even maybe Vermont, in those more mountainous terrain areas, like woodsy areas?
So investing, right?
Yeah,
So the land is a raw product that goes to every construction, if that makes sense, right?
right.
So when you talk about land, there's recreational land, there's land for homes, there's subdivision land. Right now, I talked to my engineer, and he talked to a banker that says they're seeing more development deals than they can shake a fist at. So within that prism, there's a lot of things that factor in. There's doing a small subdivision of 10 to 20 houses, right? And so that would determine what would determine that is looking at the housing, seeing if they're selling. Because in an area like Pasadena, which I know you love, Pasadena, Texas,
Mm,
if you can't find product, you create product. One of my mentors told me in a very mature market, it's hard to find distressed product. So what do? You go create product. So we would team, and I go, Ross, can you do new builds? And you go, I don't know. Let me see. And I go, okay, if I bring you 10 lots, can you make money? And you're like, well, that's different,
mm.
right? You're like, I'm used to selling houses here, but can I build them? And you go, Brodrick, go find me 10 lots. Maybe not in Pasadena, but a little bit outside of Pasadena. And now we're dancing.
Okay, so you're
And
you're
it's
buying land specifically for housing purposes.
it's more so
I gotcha.
recreational purposes. So typically my stuff that's far out is hour and a half from Houston, 2 hours from Houston. And I try to be out, 1 hour and a half to 2 hours out of a metropolitan support area,
Mm,
MSA. But I've also done stuff closer, right? Galveston County, Brazoria County, that stuff is cooking. So it's not just that, it's this, right? It's both. And sometimes you fall into them, you're like, wow, I didn't know that was great. So the key thing is in a mature market, where can you create a product? Mature market, it's hard to find distressed product because you have more buyers, right? It's kind of definition of a mature market or an increasing market. Excuse me. Hold on. So in my mind, in a mature market, you have to create product.
mm,
So if you can't find X, you go find, if you can't find three, you go find number one and number two, and you put them together, and you get number three.
gotcha.
It's almost like doing evaluation, right? There's comparable sales, cost to build, and income approach, right? You can't find any comparables, so you start looking for cost to build. There's dirt, there's wood. Let's put together a house.
Gotcha, man. All right.
So, yeah, and to answer your question, that would work in New Hampshire, that would work in Vermont. Assuming people live there and they want to live there, you can. I would imagine you
I've
could be able.
always thought about it because
Yeah.
if you go on Zillow, you can find like 10 acres for a couple $1,000, in the woods.
Yes.
I
So
always
you just
thought
need.
about just buying it, just forget about it. And
So you
hope,
just need to find someone that wants. You find 10, find someone that wants 3, right?
yeah, there you go. There you go. Or just keep it forever and just pass it
Yeah.
down to your fam.
Yeah.
One day they'll run out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I went to the land factory and they told me they were out.
Brodrick, I want to switch gears here, man. You shared with us what you're currently doing right now, but I want to go back in time, right?
Yeah.
You said that you grew up, you wanted to be a cowboy, you're really big into agriculture. That was like one of your passions as a kid. At what point in your life did you realize like, okay, I want to be in business, I want to be in the entrepreneurial space, right? So like, first off, did you grow up you grew up in Houston?
I grew up Southeast Houston.
Hometown?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start at high school times, right? How was high school for you? Were you
High
great
school
student?
was fun. Yeah. I mean, academically, things came quickly to me. I mean, so it's like some guys, and it's not like I'm smart. It's just God, it comes quicker. Like building doesn't come quicker, right? It takes a while for me to get stuff. But academic grades went okay. I played football. I was, a scrappy, just good enough football player to get interest. And I was recruited to go play football for United States Military Academy at West Point. So I was all set to go to Texas A&M to study agriculture. And Bob Sutton, who was eventually defensive coordinator then for Army, became my head coach. Then went on to the Jets and then eventually Kansas City. He came down and recruited me, and I was like, okay, I'll try that. So I went to West Point, and that was way different. I left all the agriculture behind, although I showed up to cadet basic training, and I had cow books coming to my post office box, so everybody gave me a hard time. So,
wait, I wanna back up here. So you're in high school, right? Academically, You're good, right?
I'm good. Yeah.
You're playing football. High school football.
Right, in Texas.
Right. You're in Brodrick. I know you personally. You're a big dude, bro. So, I don't know what you mean by just good enough, bro. You're a big dude.
Yeah.
So you're playing football, and one day a recruiter shows up and says, "Hey, I want you to come play football for me at
It literally was
a
like that.
military academy." Really?
So I was getting letters from Navy, and I was like, "Hey, no," I said, I'm not going to military." And my mom was like, "You should at least check it out. It's free." And we didn't come, like we weren't rich.
Right.
So check it out. And I'm like, "I'm not going." And then Bob Sutton came, and I had a little bit better perception of West Point, which held to be true. And then my coach grabbed me as I was walking to the parking lot and said, "The Army coach is here. He wants to talk to you. It's 5-year commitment after school. Are you interested in that? We want to talk to him." I said yes, and I walked into a room next to my coach's office. When I walked through my head coach's office, it was me and another guy there, a buddy of mine who's also a senior. We had 2 other guys that were really good, but they were a little bit better college prospect. One was going to Texas Tech, and the other one was going to Texas A&M. And this other guy and I were like, he's like, "You want to come up and visit?" And he talked about West Point. I said, "Okay, when can we go up and visit?" Another guy said, "I'll think about it," and he didn't go. And he was like, "That's one of the biggest mistakes he's ever made," right?
Wow.
I
Now,
went up and visited, and I was homesick on my visit. I said, "This place is horrible, but I think I'll go." And
yeah.
the bonds is what really got me, is relationships and everything like that.
Now, and this was a free ride.
It was 100% free. Well, it didn't cost anything.
Wait. Okay, so you're just good enough to play football, but
Yes.
somehow you get 100% free scholarship, and I'm sure that's not the only offer you had on the table. But
That's some academic. Yeah.
yeah, but that's to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
United
And to be clear, everybody's there for free. No one pays to go to West Point.
Nobody pays to go to West Point.
No one goes. But
Okay.
to be recruited is, it is. I mean,
Right.
it's challenging.
I didn't even know that
Yeah.
military academies are free. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so
But there is a commitment afterwards, just to be clear, right? So you're in the army afterwards.
which is to serve in the,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
you get the degree, but you have to serve.
But you get to serve,
Right. You get to
right?
serve.
You get to serve.
You get to
Yeah.
serve. Don't do that to me, bro.
You get to serve. You get the pleasure of serving in the
Yeah.
military.
Okay, so you make the decision, right? Southeast
Right.
Texas boy. Now you're up
Yeah.
in New York, right? Which is by my
Yeah.
neck of the woods, Hudson Valley,
Yes. Yes.
and you're at this school, and now you have to be there for what is it? 4 year?
4 years. Yes.
4 years. Okay. So how did that go for you, man? What was it like?
Oh, dude, it was incredibly, incredibly hard. So I wasn't a good runner when I showed up, so the physical was tough. I thought because I was a football player, I wouldn't have to do a lot of things. And I was very badly mistaken. As a matter of fact, in some ways, you're a target because you're bigger than everybody else. And it was tough, man, Ross. I can't lie. It was really hard. It was difficult. Academics were hard. I mean, I was taking, first semester, maybe 18, 19 hours. That went up to 20 after second semester. My first class, my first day was gymnastics. And you see me, I'm not a gymnast, right? It was hard. I mean, it was the worst grades I ever made and the most difficult. And, you know, I, I called home crying. I'm like, this is a hard place. And
Mm.
my grandpa said, well, one, I didn't send you up there to do bad. And, has anybody else ever made it out of there? I go, yeah. He goes, okay, you won't. You'll be the second.
Mm.
And so, and my mom told me, at times I thought about quitting football because it was so tough with the academics. And she said, nothing beats a quitter but a trier. And once you start quitting, it gets easy. So don't start.
Mm. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, the difference between non-military colleges versus
Yeah.
military ones, I'm sure, is the level of right PT that you have to do. Right, you have to
Yeah.
actually work out and study
Yes.
at the same time, versus
Yes.
kids probably waking up hungover on.
Yeah. And I started off as a defensive lineman. I was a scout team nose guard. So you're just getting beat up every day.
Wow.
So my first year, I'd get all these staph infections. My sheets would be spoiled. It was not easy
Mm.
being a scout team nose guard. And then I switched over eventually to offensive line.
Wow. And what was your like area of study, like focus?
So I studied political science. I got a bachelor of science in political science, but at West Point in academies, it's very different in that there's a lot of math. There's calculus, statistics,
Mm.
chemistry, physics. So it's a BS. And so we all have to take at that point an engineering track, and I took systems engineering.
Wow. Okay. So poli sci and systems engineering, basically.
Yes.
Cool, man. Now going to West Point, right? When you come out, you do enter active duty U.S. Army,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And what was that like for you?
That was pretty cool. So by then, I figured out a lot more about the military thing, and I I really enjoyed it because I went to Fort Gordon. I was spotted to be a signal officer. Initially, I was supposed to go to U.S. Army Europe. That eventually was changed to the 101st Airborne Vision Air Assault. Uh, the first summer, I got to go to airborne school, pretty much because I didn't want to show up to my unit without anything on my chest. So I went to parachuter school at Fort Benning, Georgia, which was fun. And the military was really cool. I liked it. At West Point, we had a certain idea of the military, but actually getting out and getting to lead soldiers was really fun.
So
It was a
you
really
you,
good
you
opportunity.
jumped out of planes.
I jumped out of planes. I slid out of helicopters, rappel out of helicopters.
All
Yeah,
right, so I've never went skydiving before, man. So
yeah.
tell us about that, man. What
Uh,
you're up there in the air. They open the door.
so to
There's
be
only one
clear,
way down.
to be clear, at West Point we had a 10-meter board we could opt to go off of, and I didn't go off of it because I was scared of heights. And so we were snowboarding, which is when you get to a unit early, and they don't have anything to do. They just have you do odd jobs. So one of our classmates found like 30, like 25 airborne slots. It's like, hey, great, we got airborne slots. I'm like, I don't want to go to airborne school, but everyone else was going, and I was like, yeah, I'll go too. So you get there, and what the Army does is they give you a lot of training, which is a good lesson for life. So you train to fall out of a plane for 3 weeks.
Mm.
So you practice small jumps, you practice high jumps, you get on a tower, you jump. So by the time you get to the date, you're pretty well trained in all the critical tasks on if something goes bad, like you're a toe jumper, because there's a static line that releases and sometimes it doesn't release. So by the time you get, you're pretty excited, but you also are in a stick with, if memory serves me correct, 16 to, 20 to 32 other people. So you all jump, if you've ever seen the video, all together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that makes it good because you're, with a couple other people. And once you get up there, you can't really go down. There's only one way out of that plane.
Yeah.
But doing so and overcoming that is a tremendous feeling of accomplishment. And so I don't have a ton of jumps. I jumped 5 times, which is the standard, a couple day jumps and night jumps as well. But it was really accomplished. And all your career, you look and you see people with airborne wings, right? But when they put them on your chest and you're like, I've done that with a lot of people, I've gone through those same, you know, I've been at Fort Benning just like other guys, and Fort Benning, home of infantry, a
Mm.
storied place. I've done that. I've jumped out of a plane. It's just a lot of
Wow.
accomplishment. And
That's that's so cool, man.
even more so when you get to a unit and your people see like, okay, he's willing to do stuff himself. It's a high level
Right.
of
And you
validate.
said you've jumped at night.
Yeah, jumped
Wow.
at night. So
Holy smokes.
yeah, yeah. And by
Dude.
night, I think it was like our last jump. We had some weather. It may have been 7, 8 o'clock, but
Yeah.
yes, there's a night jump component.
That's bad to the bone, man. So you graduate West Point, and now
Yeah.
you're an officer in the U.S. Army.
Yes.
That's a big deal, man.
Oh, thanks.
That's
Thanks.
awesome, bro. That's
Thank you.
what was your main job as an officer once you graduated?
So my first job was I was a multi-channel satellite platoon leader. So we had these big vans. I had 3 small vans and 3 big vans. The small ones were there's two, right? There was a Humvee that pulled a generator, and then there was another one that had a van on the back, like a steel structure. And we would provide multi-channel satellite communications with that. So I did that job where it were air assaultable, and that we could pick up the vans, the smaller ones, under a Chinook, take them 150 kilometers, which is about 30 miles, and then drop them. It's long that 150 kilometers is, well, five is three, yeah, about 30 miles. We'd sit them down, and then we'd have non line of sight communications anywhere in the world. So that was my
Mm,
first job. Then I was executive officer for a company. Then I was a signal officer for an artillery company.
mm.
And I boxed and played rugby as well.
Rugby. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So what was your what rank did you end up achieving?
I got out as a first lieutenant. So I got out earlier. We were offered the voluntary early out as part of the peace dividend. So I got out as a first lieutenant.
Awesome. Now, what would you say your favorite part about being in the United States military was?
I think the camaraderie was was probably my favorite. When I was in the military, you're around a lot of people who think like you, a lot of people who value things and have some values. I mean, the military is a very diverse organization, make no standpoint. But a lot of people have made a commitment to do certain things and stand up and be there when the call is granted. So that's what I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the relationships. So one of the guys who was at my first post, we're still good friends to today.
Mm,
We talk all the time. The guys and gals that I was at West Point with are some of my best friends. People that I can count on that provide mentorship and leadership. So those things I really enjoy and I really value. And so my daughter's at West Point now, and just knowing that we speak the same language, we have the same set of understandings. That's just really important. And
well,
and also, there's a lot of failure in the military. There's dealing with a lot of failure.
what would you say your least favorite part was?
I think my least favorite part was being away. I'm really into family, and on one hand, we feel like there's a stronger call, and we're doing this for our family. But being away from family is tough, and I made a decision that I didn't really want to have my personal decision. I always wondered about having a kid in the military and being away. I know a lot of people do it very successfully, and I admire them. And an older me may have made a different decision, right? As we get older, we see a lot of things we don't see through younger eyes. But I'd say the most difficult thing is um, it's being away from family and knowing the gravity of giving orders that could put people in harm's way.
Mm.
Actually, that's probably more so than the first, right? Is knowing the gravity of giving orders that can put people in harm's way.
So you depart from the military life.
Yes.
Now what?
So I got out, and then I was looking to figure out what to do. So I worked for a junior military, or I was recruited. I'm sorry, let me back up. I got the aid of a JMO recruiter, right, which is junior military officer. So at that time, there was the internet. Well, there's no internet to speak of. We're still AOL dial-up, and so there's JMO recruiters. They're still out there who help place military officers in Fortune 500 companies primarily, or companies. And it's interesting because, like, I was reading Jack Welch's book, and he talks about it at this time. GE was one of the companies looking for JMO officers to train as black belts, and Home Depot and companies like Johnson and Johnson. So I got out from the Army. A recruiter helped me get a job with Johnson and Johnson. So I went from being in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to San Francisco, California. And San Francisco, California doesn't look anything like Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And that San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in America, probably one of the most beautiful cities in
Beautiful.
the
I
world.
love the Bay.
So they gave me a job offer, right? And they sent me, I think before they gave me the offer, they said it was contingent to me going out to San Francisco. So they put me up in like an embassy suites in Burlingame, which is like looking at the bay. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this looks nothing like. I was like blown away. The city is beautiful,
Mm.
you know. So that was my first job that I eventually accepted, was selling medical supplies in the Northern Bay Area, or actually on the peninsula. So Stanford University was my biggest hospital.
Mm. And were you single at the time?
I was single. I was dating my soon to be, well, initially I wasn't, because my wife and I broke up. We got back together. And so I was single. I was pretty much selling in surgery.
Mm. So
So
you
a
go
lot of
out.
the thought leaders at Stanford, the cardiovascular surgeons, all those guys. So
It's really interesting to hear that pathway that you took, man, because you're from Southeast Texas. You just spent how many years in the military?
I spent 3 years in the military,
Plus the four
including
years.
West plus 4 years at West
Yeah.
Point.
So 7 years, give or take.
Yes.
And now you have the opportunity to go back home, but instead you go to San Francisco to sell medical products for Johnson Johnson.
Oh, I was a glutton for punishment. Like, that's a great job, to be clear. Like, that was criminal prop, and it speaks to, uh, was it a great job? Yes, J&J is known for the J&J way, great leadership. That was an awesome job. But the part of me did want to go back to Texas, right? And so I took that opportunity because it was a challenge. They had Johnson and Johnson Ethicon, which is the division I worked for. They had lost a lot of market share on the peninsula, particularly at Stanford University, and they wanted me to come in and help turn that around. And I did. I was there for 2 years. After the first year, we were trying to get a foothold to make salary, not salary, to do negotiation for contracts. And after the first year and 2 months, we'd gotten so much market share that it no longer made sense to do a contract,
Okay.
which is good for profit. But when you talk about medical efficacy, it's a little bit more challenging, right?
Now, while you were in the Bay, did you get an apartment or what did that look like?
I had an apartment. It's crazy. I had a chance to buy a place, right? And I didn't. And you're like, do,
Yeah, San
I
Francisco is one of the most
oh
expensive
god,
markets in the
yeah.
country right now.
I could have bought a place, not on the peninsula, but right across in Hayward. This guy knew the builder. It was like 194,000, and I was like, man, that's a lot of money, right? And then it was a cool little place, and I was, that place was so expensive. I had a cost of living adjustment that they gave me, but it was so expensive to live there, and it just blew your mind.
Yeah.
But you look at it now, which is, one guy always says, if you think real estate's expensive now, right, just wait.
Yeah, that's true, man.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if states like South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Louisiana are going to stay as affordable as they are. Because I see prices in Houston creeping up, especially like in the Loop. At least it's definitely going up. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yes. I mean, I think the prices all. I mean, for a long time when I was in school in New York, I'd be like, prices in Texas are just so cheap, and eventually it makes sense they would come up.
Mm.
And I think there's a certain segment of people in the Bay Area that are always going to like living in the Bay Area. There's a lot of people who love the Bay Area. The majority, and I don't know if this is still true, but the majority of the people that go to school in the Bay Area go back to the Bay Area. Like if you go to Berkeley, you go to Stanford, a lot
Mm.
of those people live in the Bay Area.
It's just a beautiful city, man. It's a good
Oh, it
vibe
is.
out there. I
It
love the
is.
day, and I cruised through Palo Alto and
Oh man.
all those areas and hit up some
You,
In and Out.
yeah, you in and out. Hey, double double animal style.
That's it, brother. That's
You know
it.
what trips me out, Ross? Is when I was in the Bay Area, the people were like East Palo Alto's bad. EPA, right? You don't want to go over there. And you go over there and go, man, it ain't bad. And then you kick yourself like, I went over there, it ain't bad. It's like right there, right?
Yeah,
And you go to Austin, people are like, East Austin's bad. Like, I get my haircut in Austin. It's like right there. It's like right on the other side of the road. And you're like, dude, if only I had known, right? Buy in East Palo Alto, right? EPA is totally different.
yeah.
Buy in East Austin, right? It just kills you. You're like, man, I drove there. I was like, hey, it ain't, don't seem that bad to me.
Dude, I'm kicking myself in the butt for not buying Tesla at $350 a share a couple months ago. Because today, at the time we're recording this, Tesla just passed $2K a share. Unbelievable.
Dude, you know what's crazy is one of my buddies, and he's kind of become a legend. He just put 100. He just bought 127 acres, and like 2 weeks later, Tesla announced, and it's like 1.9 miles from his land. He just bought
No way. In Texas,
in Texas,
right? Because
and then
people are fleeing California, man.
yeah, he just bought it. He's a developer, and he's just killing it. He's
That's
a
awesome, man.
classmate of mine. As a matter of fact, you probably should interview him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I'd love to. If you can make that connection, man, we'll talk
Oh, of
offline.
course.
So you're working for Johnson and Johnson now. What happened after that? What'd you do?
So I worked for J&J, and then I started getting a little homesick. I got married. After a year, I got married, and me and my wife were like, hey, if we're going to live somewhere, we need to live in Jersey, where she's from, or Texas. So I moved to Texas. I worked for a headhunter for a little bit while I tried to figure it out. Then I got a job working for a startup company with a lot of MBAs from Ivy League schools. This is 99. We're all going to be rich. I was director of operations. We did fan loyalty programs for sports teams. And I was like the fifth employee, went from 5 to like 40 employees.
Mm.
Then the dot-com bubble burst.
And what happened?
Dot-com bubble burst, and I got laid off. I got a job with Computer Associates, and I made my mind up to go to grad school.
Okay, where
So,
at A&M or?
oh no, so I went to Texas. So yeah,
Yeah.
UT. So
Okay.
I had applied in California, and I hadn't gotten to school. I applied to like 6 or 7 grad schools, and I'd taken like the GMAT like 4 times, right? And I'd taken a prep course. And so I moved to Texas. I said, hey, I'm gonna try again after a little spell. So I took like 2 or 3 more prep. I took another prep course. I took the GMAT like 3 more times, and I got into UT. I got waitlisted NYU, and I got into University of Rochester. So I went
Mm.
to Texas, got an MBA in finance.
Interesting. Okay.
And,
So
and to be clear, I got a fellowship, right? A fellowship. There's a consortium of graduate studies and management fellowship, which is for underrepresented minorities. And so my tuition and fees were all paid by the fellowship.
so you went to UT to grad school for free.
Well, I still had to eat and live, but tuition and
How much would that have costed you out of pocket cash
oh
for
man,
that type of
nah,
program?
Texas was relative. Actually, I don't know because I didn't look, but Texas was relatively expensive. But my friends who went to grad school at places like Columbia, well, it's hard to compare to someone in Columbia, but I know a lot of guys came out of grad school with $125,000 in debt. 100, yes.
Wow. That's interesting, man. You definitely have been all over the place from everything you're telling me, right? Working different jobs, right?
Yes.
Living in different cities.
Yes.
Now, while you were going through this whole process down these, pathways, were you ever thinking about like the bigger picture, like this is where I want to be, this is what I want my life to look like, or were you just taking jobs to make a paycheck to just kind of coast by?
No, man. When I was in it, it was. I mean, when you take a job with Johnson and Johnson, and everyone's like, "This is great. You got a company car, first job out of the army, compensation is awesome. This is it." But but also from my perspective, like, what do I really eventually want to be doing? Well, I was out, and to some extent, it's asking for what you want. And I wasn't really good at that early in
Mm,
my career. I wasn't really good at saying, I know it's kind of intimidating to say I want to move to Texas because I may be perceived badly as a non-loyal employee, but I really want to move to Texas. And can you help me get that? That wasn't a real skill set because I was like, hey, soldier, you carry on and you do for the company. And I just wasn't very versed in that. So Johnson John was awesome. It was great, but but the hardest thing for me with that job at the time was being alone
mm,
because I'd come from an environment with teams, and being alone in my car was it was tough for me at that point. The being alone, driving from a point to appointment, it wasn't what I really wanted in my life. Although I'm alone now and it's okay, but at 25, 26, that was difficult for me. When I was working for a startup company, dude, I mean, I was working for with Tim Keys, whose father was the CEO of Johnson Controls, Matt Gephardt, whose father, Dick Gephardt, run for president, and a couple other guys who had really top-notch MBAs. I think Tim had gone to Stanford, Matt had gone to Northwestern, right? And then there's a couple, and then we hired guys who had, and at that point in my life, man, an MBA meant you were smart and you had it all figured out. And there was a rising wave of internet companies. I mean, to put yourself in the moment in '99, the internet bubble was huge, right?
mm-hmm,
It was an inflating bubble. And so we thought we are going to take the company public. I was a key employee. Those things were all great until I remember when living.com went bankrupt, right? And all these companies start popping, and it's like, holy cow, I got a new house and a kid. What are you going to do? Computer associates, I didn't really say as a long term job. I had to feed my family, but my eye was on grad school at the time.
mm.
I mean, I was like, hey, I want to figure out how finance works. That's just it. Now there's a lot to be said for sticking one place and gutting it out. I mean, I know a lot of people have done very well.
So you get the MBA,
Yes,
which I'm sure that was pretty difficult
it
to
was tough.
some
It was
tough
tough, but
courses.
it was tough, but it wasn't West Point tough. I mean,
Oh, I mean, yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
you
yeah,
graduated West Point. I mean, of course, yeah, I don't think too many things
yeah,
are
yeah,
tougher than that. But you get the MBA, right? Now you got
yes,
this piece of paper, right? Master's degree in
yes.
business. What do you do? Do you start applying for? Do you get placed in a position? Do you start applying for companies? What did
Well,
that look like?
remember, I had a wife during grad school, and I started grad school with a 1 year old kid, right? And my
Mm,
wife took the first year off. The second year she worked. So it was the stress came from, hey, I'm taking this degree. I don't know if I'm gonna get a job. Remember '01, everything Austin in '01 was nothing like Austin now. They were shuttering buildings. It went from a hey, we're all gonna make it to oh my gosh, the Nasdaq's crashed. All these companies are X. Dell's laying off. Remember in Austin, you had the Dellionaires, right? So the mid '90s had created a lot of millionaires in Austin from Dell and associated companies. You had Samsung, all this. So in '01, Austin was like, holy cow, what are we going to do? Internet was still doing, I mean, energy was still doing kind of well for a while, but then Enron blew up,
mm,
right? So I'm like, what am I going to do? And everyone said, if you're serious, you want to go in finance. And if you're serious about finance, you want to go work in New York. So I wasn't that crazy about New York, but I'm like, I want to work in New York because that's what, if you're serious about finance, you work in New York. So I set upon getting my job as a job on Wall Street. It was my goal.
mm,
Eventually getting like a private equity type of thing. So I got a job with Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch came to interview. And so to be clear, before I went to grad school, I interned with a asset manager, and they taught me how to evaluate companies. So that's preparing yourself for the job at hand. So when I got to grad school, I'd already evaluated companies as an intern, right? So it gave me a little bit of advantage when the interviews come up and they go, how do you evaluate a company? I'm like, okay, this boom, boom. So I got jobs that a lot of people that had better grades, I got interviews that a lot of people had better grades were also getting. So when it came time for the Merrill interviews, which my Merrill, like the Merrill team came, September 10th, Merrill was at University of Texas. September 11th, the world changed,
Mm.
right? So I made an impression. They interviewed me. They brought me in on February 14th, 2012. I, as a non-core school. University of Texas is not a core school for Merrill, right? At that time, Merrill's core schools were did they have a presence? Yes, they had a presence. Their core schools were the Ivy League schools, right? But they brought me in on September 12th, and I went and bought me a new tie, like an $80 tie. My wife thought I was crazy. They flew me up. I didn't realize it would be cold. I had no jacket. I'm going around Ground Zero. I don't know if you remember Ground Zero, what it looked like before they rebuilt the path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going around Ground Zero, and I'm looking. I'm feeling devastated. I'm like, look, we got to rebuild this. I'll be a part of that. And I get an interview that day. I go through like 5 interviews. Last interview, they're like, hey, you did well. We want to give you an offer for internship. I was like, whoa, bro, that's huge, right?
Mm.
So I was like one of the first people in my job. And not only that, at the time, it came with like I don't know, like a $10,000 sign-in bonus or something, maybe five, but that was big when you're in school. So I got an interview. I interned. I went up there to intern. I'm like, I'm gonna get a job. I got offered a job with I think another signing bonus, like 25 or so after, and I was set. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Now, did
So
did the did the wife come up with you or?
not during the summer. I mostly was there by myself. I stayed with my mother-in-law in Union and commuted in,
Okay, so you
right?
were willing to be away from your family to go take this internship in New York.
Yeah, I was, and she came up to visit a couple times, but I interned in New York, and
That had to be
I,
tough, right?
it is, but I started liking the city. I mean, the city was. I started realizing what New York was really like, and I was like, wow, I could see myself living here. I know it's gonna be challenging, and it was, but
So you got this Southeast Texas boy on Wall Street.
yeah, yeah. So I came up, and I had rotated to a lot of programs, and I wound up on the currency desk.
Mm.
And eventually, that's where my offer came from. I eventually was on the currency desk covering hedge funds, pension funds, and commodity trading advisors.
That's a sexy position. I mean, that's like the dream, man. You get the Wall Street gig, the
Yeah,
nice apartment with
yeah,
the beautiful view. I mean, that's the dream, man.
yeah, yeah. You're hopping. You get in the car service to go hop on the boat.
Yeah,
You got to be on the desk at 6 o'clock. Yeah, it was fun.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
fun.
That's definitely a very fast paced environment.
Oh, it's a very stressful environment too.
I've only
Um,
been down there at Wall Street a handful of times. I mean that
yeah,
it's crazy what's going on right now with
yeah.
COVID and everything because you know a lot of these places are empty. They
Yeah.
used
Well,
to.
we were at 250 VC, right, which is right over by the Winter Garden. If you know what I'm talking about, right across from right next to the Merc.
Okay,
You know what I'm talking about?
I've
You know where the Mercantile Exchange is. You know where the Winter Garden is, right? You go all the way down to the end.
I
You
know
can
where
see the
I
Statue of
know where
Liberty.
the bull is. Is it by the
Okay,
bull?
not the Bull, not the
Okay,
Bull. So if you come back, if you go back towards the Hudson from the
okay.
Bull, because that's why I said every firm on Wall Street isn't really on Wall Street,
It's
right?
in the
So, yeah,
vicinity.
yeah, it's a little, yeah. I guess you're right. It's not that far. It's like a mile.
Yeah,
So
I mean
yeah,
Wall Street is obviously a
term and
physical
yeah, no,
location, but it's a
yeah,
term
exactly.
for you can have an
Yes,
Avenue on Fifth Avenue. So you're working at Wall Street. I get it.
that's a good point. I guess I'm
Yeah,
being too technical. Yeah,
yeah. I
exactly.
get
Yeah,
it. I get it.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's super cool, man. And obviously, right now you're not with Merrill anymore, right?
yeah. No.
You departed. Why was that?
One, I was laid off, right? So to be clear, banks have an up or out policy, and it's funny because people say it's competitive, but what that looks like is very challenging. I mean, you have to go out and get your own clients. Um, you have to, banks are bringing in people every year. In a place like Merrill, they're cutting 10% every year. Hey, we had a great year. We're still cutting people. So I was
No
laid
shit.
off. Yeah, I was laid off, and I went to another bank.
In New York.
Yeah, it's a matter of time. I mean, at banks, I mean,
Yeah.
not to say it, but either you're gonna become president or eventually you'll be laid off.
No shit, dude. So
Yeah.
when I
So
was,
then I went to two other banks, right? So I went to
yeah,
Dresdner. I worked there, and you're like, oh man, I'm like, dude, it's okay, right? So I worked there for right at 3 years, and I was laid off, and then I went to, and it's some of the things. It's funny because I have a partner. We talk about banks. I mean, some of the things you see at banks are it's just a different world, right? Working on a foreign exchange desk is like the wild wild west. So but what I took from it and the lessons I hear, I mean, my manager, who I thought was probably one of the toughest managers I ever had, I have like messages she's given me, tons and tons of times in my head.
when I was like 18, I responded to this Craigslist ad
Yeah,
to go work on Wall Street,
yeah,
and this was like Wolf of Wall Street movie
yeah,
style. I go in
yes,
there, huge fancy building, man.
yeah,
I bought a suit from Sears. I had every intention of returning it after the interview. I was
yes,
broke, man. Broke as a joke. So I show up to this interview, man. They wine and dine you and everything. They sit you down in the conference room. You probably know this well. Tell me they're gonna pay me like $200 a week to make 1,000 phone calls a day in the boiler room, and I'm like,
yeah,
they're like, yeah, and then we'll pay for the Series 7, and you'll become a junior broker, and da 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 da.
yeah.
And I'm like, man, dude, I'm gonna be losing money taking the train to work every day. Like, I can't afford that. So I didn't take the
It's
position. But then
yeah.
the
Well, the
place got
funny,
busted by the FBI the day, like 2 weeks later,
wow.
for running a boiler room.
Well, the funny thing is, not the not so funny thing is, you just see so much, like the deal flow you see, the people, the intelligence and savviness, right, of the individuals you deal with, it's such a high level, probably the highest I've ever been. Like just raw smarts. I mean, I had a boss who could name every capital in the world. He's like, you can't stump me. I'm like, oh, freaking Montenegro or whatever. He's like, oh, boom. We were like, ah. So that was very.
The Ivy
That
League
was
guys, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, he was a Wharton guy, Wharton MBA. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's all that, but also the like seeing what's going on in the world like as it unfolds, as well as unfortunately seeing what happens when people make mistakes managing capital.
Mm.
And one of the things I always say is anybody can blow up. Anybody can blow up, and being the arms of and feed of the people who are closing out trades. So, example, when I was at um, a bank, not Merrill, we had one of my biggest clients was Amaranth, which was a multi-strat firm, and Brian Hunter, who was an oil trader, like he blew up. And so my buddy was on paternity leave, and he's calling, going, "Hey, we need to close out all our trades." And you execute the trades, and then 10 minutes
Mm.
later, you see on CNBC a footer going, "This firm, suffered 35% losses, and they'll be shutting their doors." And seeing that, I think gives, in one way, it lets you know that everything, well, that we can all fail, right? And that failure is not the death knell. People do come back from failure. Barton Biggs, you read his book, hedgehogging. He's come back from failure. I mean, there's stories of guys who manage large amounts of capital who have failed and come back. It's how you do it. Do you do it gracefully? Do you do it with ethics? And it's not fraud. That's different, right? But failure, we can come back from. And once I think we learn that, we can. I think you have to know that failure's out there in order to really succeed.
Mm. I like that, man. That's powerful. It's very interesting to me that throughout your whole journey, the NBA, all that stuff, big firms on Wall Street, you're now in your own business where you don't need an MBA.
Exactly.
But I'm sure that everything you've done in the past has set you up for success now. Whether it's reading numbers, looking at companies and evaluating them, and seeing where you're able to go, growth wise in the future. It's really important, in the business world. Because like you said, it's easy to screw yourself and blow up and lose money.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is not easy, man. A lot of people don't know, just because you flip a house doesn't mean you're going to make profit. It's easy to over budget.
Oh, man.
So, you have a great story. And, I have a few more questions for you before we wrap it up here.
Go ahead.
Number one, man, is knowing what you know now. If you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would do differently?
Where?
At any point in your life, like that one thing where it's like, man, if I could just go back to this time period and I could have done this.
I mean, I'll take the podcasts in consideration, and I'll say in regards to real estate. That makes sense. And starting my career, I think there's a couple things that I can list that are key things that I would do differently, and I like to think they're things I do now. I'd say one is get mentorship. It's the cheapest money you ever spent. And a lot of times people, and even I will chide, that guy's charging. We all rib it, that guy's charging whatever. Well, get a good mentor, right? That's what saying, right? It's like saying, I bought a car, it's really bad, and so I should never buy cars. No, get a good mentor. They may cost and they may be free. Find them, seek them out, and put something in the bank, right? In order to take something out of the bank, you got to put something in the bank. My biggest failures in business have come from not having a good mentor. Now, when I ran my trading company, which we didn't talk about, it's hard to get people because we're all so competitive. But in real estate, there's a lot of guys that are willing to help you out, right? Vet them out and learn how to vet them out. But mentorship, like I told you, I lost $5,000 on my first contract because I didn't ask anybody how to write a real estate contract, right? So mentorship, I didn't really start taking off until I took, I can't think of the guy's name now. Timai and what's the other guy's name? AC.
Who's been a guest on the show.
AC probably. I didn't know you could flip.
Hey, easy. Easy on the promo of AC, man. AC, you better pay for this sponsorship. No,
didn't know you could wholesale a house and talk to AC's class.
Yeah, no, AC's a solid guy, man.
So AC helped me out a ton, right? Get started. He basically allowed me to feed my family, right?
Yeah.
So I would say mentorship would be the first thing, and two, man, partner. I know you partner well, and it's really helped you out in your business. I was going at it alone. I'm like, all these guys are partnering. Man, partner. Because if you make a good partner, if you're a good partner and you can grow your business. Now, if you're doing bad deals, and that's one thing, right? If there's not enough margin, you're going to do a lot of deals. You'll be a deal junkie. So, but you'll never figure it out, right? Like you'll blow up trying to do over leveraging without partners and mentorship. Mentorship and partnering will change your business and allow you to have a business, right? I think one of the things partners do that's really good is they provide accountability. When you're buying a house, or when I'm buying a house and I'm going to get a private loan and nobody's looking at it, there's a kind of adversarial relationship between any lender and not an adversarial relationship, a non-mutually beneficial relationship between I don't know if that's the right word. Lenders are on one place and anybody borrows another money is on another place, right? It's just there. But when you're in a partner, it's like we eat together, bro. You eat, I eat, right? Right? Lenders go, you made a lot of money, that's great. Every lender's going to go, but I just got my fee, right? Partners, you eat, we eat.
I agree with you. I will say, in my opinion, there has to be enough meat on the bone, man. You got to be doing volume or big deals.
But see, that's the same thing when you're by yourself, right? You can go broke doing small deals.
In what way?
Because you're not making enough margin. So it's almost like you can grow yourself broke, right? So if you're doing small deals, not enough margin, you're going broke and you don't even know it. You're moving money from one pile to another, but not making money, right? You're churning. But when you got a partner, you're like, man, like now, if I'm looking at a deal, I'm saying, is there 100K in the deal? Because we both got to eat, right? There's not 100K.
If you're talking 6-figure deals, yeah. I was more so talking about, wholesaling with a partner and you're making a 5K spread and it's like $2,500 a piece. Well, you have to do volume to be able to eat because But I agree. Like you said earlier, you're not mechanically inclined. Neither am I. I kid you not. I called the maintenance team to come change the light bulbs in the ceiling because I'm not breaking my neck out there.
I'm there.
Yeah.
People go, do you do it yourself? I'm like, no, I write checks well.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
That's it, man. That's me.
That's the thing.
I had a partner in my real estate business who was mechanically inclined and worked out great, So I agree with you 100%,
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I guess got to be a lot of meat on the bone. I'm like, yeah, that's how businesses work, right? They have margin criteria, and then you start going, no, 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 yes, right? No, 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 yes. So that's the thing. I mean, you may have to do bigger deals. You have to do stuff that's maybe a little bit more complex. You got to find that margin. But now, when you find it, it's like, dang, we can eat. We can all eat.
I like it,
and
man.
So that's what I think, man. Mentorship and partnering.
Boom.
I mean, I got guys I talk to every night. I mean, I got one guy, we chop it up every night, and we're like, okay, I'm seeing this. And I think the third thing is an idea of abundance. If you have an idea of abundance, or once I start realizing abundance, stuff starts coming back to you. There's enough deals out there for me to eat and you to eat. You're like, oh, it's competitive. We need to get something that's not competitive, right? So Porter's Five Forces, right? Which is model you learn in grad school, which basically says look at the market you're in and figure out it's where you need to be, right? If you have no power and no control, you need to be somewhere else, right? If I'm chasing $135,000 houses, and why? Like, it's like when I was trading, I talked to a guy who's basically worked for one of the biggest firms, right? And he mentored me. He said, you know what? He said two things. What? One, this is a business we've chosen. You know what movie that's from? Godfather.
Can you believe it or not? I've never seen The Godfather.
Oh, you're Italian. You've never seen The Godfather?
I've never seen it, man.
He said, this is the business we've chosen, right? This business we've chosen, right? And then he said, no one's making you trade. No one's making you buy houses. Right? No one said, hey, Ross, you need to go buy a house today. So
fair play.
Yeah. So, to get back to the thing of that, realize that there's enough deals out there for everybody.
There really is, man. There's enough. I love the abundance mindset because there is so much money in this world to be made, and a lot of people get started think like, oh well, in Houston, there's 100 wholesalers in, Katy. That means I can't do it. Well, that's not true. You can do it.
You might not need to be wholesaling. Right?
I mean, there's a difference between abundance and like adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Like, if there's an influx, like, dude, when I was buying back 2015 in Pasadena, I was getting laughed at for buying in Pasadena because everybody wanted to buy Heights, Spring brands. Now Pasadena is exploding. You got people doing. It's cool to be in Pasadena now. So I'm like, all right, I got to adjust a little bit. But
my first house I bought was in Pasadena. I didn't keep it. I should have. I sold it twice though.
Yeah.
I sold it like 6 weeks ago. But the point is, mentorship should help you evolve, right? Because markets change. They just do. They're like a person. They change, and as they become mature, then your strategy may have to change. So that's the thinking part of the business, right? We got to think and analyze our business. And if we're just chop, the market's going to change. And you go like, man, it's too tough. It's too frustrating. It's too hard. Get someone else who can look at it and go, have you thought about this? Like I said, have you thought about building? You're like, I don't know. I don't build. I'm like, should you?
I thought about it.
Yeah. So a lot of times it's getting someone going, man, I chopped up something. You look at my board. You're like, hey, Brodrick's doing that. That cat ain't smarter than me. He ain't working harder than me. I could do 10 houses.
I don't
right?
know, man. You NBA, U.S. Army officer, jumping out of planes. I don't know, man.
Just take the idea, man. Hey, smooth ships don't make good captains, right?
My man. Brodrick, I asked every guest on the show the same question. I'd like to extend that question to you. If that's okay.
Yes.
So far in your entire life, what has been the best advice that you've ever received? Like that one piece of advice that you just live your life by?
Ooh, gosh. One piece of advice.
Yeah, like that one golden nugget that you just,
Well,
carry with
I
you.
I think attitude matters, right? And it's funny you asked me a question, before. I think attitude matters. It's the one thing you have complete control of, right? It's like you walk out of the house, you put your foot in, some cow patty, right? You can go, you know what, that sucks. I'm gonna have a horrible day. And so I've had friends tell me, they go, Broderick, you got a high threshold for pain. I generally think it's all gonna work out in the end, right? Oh, I did. You asked me one thing I wish I'd have done differently. I had a six-figure paycheck and I put it back into real estate instead of paying off some debt, and it caused some issues, right? That I'm working out to today. 'Cause I made some bad decisions, but I still think it's gonna work out in the end. And now I'm having a banner year. I'm having my best year I've ever had, ever by
Mm,
far, right?
mm,
But your attitude is the only thing. My attitude is the only thing I control. Hey, this sucks. You know what? It'll all be better tomorrow, and follow it up. And I think people gravitate toward attitude. They start to attitude to track. I'm vibing,
mm.
right? We've got along. We've only talked probably 4 or 5 times ever, right? But hey, Ross, man, that guy. When I first time I met you, I was like, man, that guy's loud. He's talking about your crap. And I go, you know what? He thinks he's gonna make it, right? Right? You think you're gonna make it, right? You know what? There's a lot of value in that. I probably learned something from this kid, right? We've never chopped it up. I'm like, look, this kid's like, look, I'm here. You see me. You know what I'm doing. You know what I stand for.
Mm.
So,
I respect
attitude,
that, man. Thank you.
attitude.
Dude, do you ever get mad?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yes. Why?
Because, every time I have talked to you or seen you in a network, and you're always happy. You're always happy. You're always happy, smiling, cracking jokes, something. It's hard for me to picture you, like, angry,
I
pissed
get
off.
angry. I get angry. I had a deal that closed and didn't fund yesterday. I got a little angry, but I heard some the other day, and they were talking about it's not have to, it's not want to, it's I get to. Think about what we
Mm,
get to do. Like, we're sitting here chopping it up, right? We get to do that. Your day is probably predicated on what you want to do. You get to
mm.
do that. We're blessed, bro. Like, by far.
That's a
You could
fact.
live in Houston, Dallas, or New York on your choosing because of the moves you're making.
That's a great way to look at it. Right?
Right?
It's a privilege every day.
Yeah,
It's a
dude. Come on,
blessing,
think
man.
about it. Think about what you get to do. You get to talk to interesting people. People you called me, I didn't even hesitate. You want to do it? I say, yeah, chop it up.
That's a great perspective, man. It really is, because it's easy to forget that when there's so much going on and so much chaos out there in the world, and the media wants you to be pissed off and upset all the time, and
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, man. So you get
yeah.
to do certain things, and
Because
it's a blessing.
and another thing, one more thing, if I may, right?
Absolutely.
I remember in 2011 ish. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he had done well. He had he had started a fund, sold it to Morgan Stanley. I said, man, what's it like making money or something like that? He's like, dude, making money is easy. He goes, what you want is influence.
Mm.
Making money is easy.
Well, essentially, yes.
Yeah, it is, right?
It
Like,
is.
it is. You see people sacrifice whatever. Just making money is easy. Keeping money is challenging. But what you really want is influence. You want people to go, hey, you know what, Ross, I got a problem. How I solve this?
Mm.
That's how you really make money, right? Hey, I got a problem, or I'm thinking about doing this idea. Can you help me out? Or when you get to that point, like I got a guy I talk to all the time. He's like, man, you're doing bigger deals. Eventually, I'm gonna be buying from you, and you're gonna be buying from me. We're gonna be
Mm.
platting and doing this. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, man.
So, influence.
Influence. I agree, bro. That's my true purpose, I believe, is to impact. I
Yeah.
love impacting, so I absolutely agree with you on that, man. And with that being said, Broderick, dude, you got to write a book, my man. You got
I'm just
because, dude, I only got an hour on this podcast, but I could keep going for a couple more, man. You got a lot to share, bro.
Oh, thanks, man.
You know,
Hey, I'm flattered that you asked me. Like I
absolutely.
say, I'm flattered, and I hope you do well. I really wish you well. I'm proud of you with your little girl, right?
Little baby, man.
Little
Almost
baby.
7 months, brother.
7 months, bro. I'm
Yeah.
happy for you, man.
Hey,
I'm
man, I
happy for you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much, bro.
You're
And
welcome.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to reach out to you. I'll put your socials in the show notes, man. People to give you some feedback and
Yeah,
connect with
cool.
you. And
We're land key text, right? So
yeah, wait,
cool.
what? Land Key?
Land key. So you can hit us up. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Land key
That
text.
sounded like a
Land key
different
TX.
language.
Land key. Just basically land key and then underscore TX for
Gotcha.
Texas. Although we'd like to be worldwide, you can see our pictures of our land. You can see us out there chopping it up, all that. So cool.
I'll link it in the show notes, man. And with that being said, enjoy the night, bro.
Thanks. Enjoy. Talk.